So, hello everyone. Welcome to Conference Poster Design with me, Jonny Wood. I'm the UMB Library's graphic designer. A little bit about me, if I can progress, here we go. So, prior to joining UMB as the library's graphic designer, I've been an independent designer and brand consultant for over 15 years. I've worked with startups and SMEs to help them understand, refine the brand messaging, and also had the pleasure of working with a couple of UMB's incubator programs, Energy and the Summer Institute, helping startups and small businesses basically understand their own brand, understand their audience, understand the messaging behind that, and how to connect to them in the most appropriate way. So, how does that relate to conference poster design? I may not have a huge amount of experience with conference poster design. I have designed one, which we'll come on to, for a colleague of mine, Eric Moore, and he introduced me to Better Posters by Mike Morrison, which some of you may be familiar with. Mike Morrison is a UX designer, and he took his attention specifically to poster designs and how to improve the look and feel of them. So this was the first I'd heard of it, and Eric came to me and he needed to basically create a poster which talked about embedding librarians in archaeological field schools. Now, this is the poster that we used. Within his basic hierarchy of information, essentially, we've used 3 sections. Your eye is drawn to the headline, which isn't actually the title. The title is kind of here, but the more important information, the attention-grabbing information, comes to the top. And then the main section we've utilised for basically imagery, key points. It may be this one's very visual. It's about archaeologists and in the field, so there's a lot of photography was required. But you may have charts, you may have your final data, you may have your final output, and kind of highlighting it in the middle. Let me come on to explain the reasonings behind this and where we got to for this. So, as I've just kind of broken down, Mike Morrison, he was frustrated by the kind of lack of design, so to speak, in poster design. And he started to look at the layout and where things can sort of work better. So if I just flick back to the final piece there, as you can see, I was talking about those sections. If we go into it, it's actually really simple in terms of left sidebar with the way we've done it, and this is totally flexible. Everything is flexible and should be based around your project, the content you've got, and ultimately the message you're trying to share. We'll come on to that. So here we've broken it down with simple author's title, breakdown of the project with the details. Because we're representing UMB libraries, we also included branding. The headline grabs people's attention, and then key points of interest, findings, results, which we'd actually split into 4 sections based on 4 project kind of overviews that Eric wanted to highlight. Another thing we included was the QR code, because one thing I'm going to say a lot in this presentation is less is more. Simplify it, pull out your key data, pull out your key findings, pull out the most important information, the most exciting information. Anything else, any supporting research, data, graphs, charts, visualizations, surveys, anything that takes up a lot of text that is just not going to get read, or a lot of like detailed imagery, create a QR code, put it on a website, direct people there, or print it out, have a handout, have a little handout that you can give people that are interested in your project. So, sticking with this, Better Posters by Mike Morrison. I have lifted this from a presentation he did back in 2020, so apologies for the, it's not quite the 2020, but we're not far off. So back in 1990, the kind of standard for scientific or university kind of posters would be getting as much information on there as possible. The kind of logic being, look at all the work we've done, this is the theory behind it, this was what was done, these are the results, this is involved, etc., etc. Now, the kind of problem with that is, sorry, let me catch up with my notes. So, a while ago, you may have been competing with 6, 8 posters in one room. People are taking a little bit more time, they're walking around, they're going to sort of stand and engage a little bit more. These days, you may be in a room with 100 other people, and you are fighting for attention. People are walking around, you need to grab their attention. They can't, if they see a wall of text, next to a wall of text, next to a wall of text, they're just going to keep going. So how do we make that engaging? How do we make people stop, look, engage, ask questions? Here's some examples of the kind of traditional style. A lot of text. I mean, format is kind of there, somewhat still with the left sidebar, but all this data, just text, it's not visual. Mario's going to talk about data visualization soon. But all of this information could have been presented visually, a little bit like the charts here. That's slightly better, but it's still just text. It's still black on white, or a little bit of color. It's not very engaging, and it's going to take time to stand there and kind of figure out the core of what's going on. So, Better Posters. Mike came up with, it's been around for a while. There's a couple of iterations. This was the first iteration of it. And the whole point is keeping it simple, a little bit of white space, use the space wisely, so big titles, a key infographic, key data, get someone to stop, get someone to engage, to sort of think about it. Again, similar to how me and Eric had laid ours out, just sort of key points on the left. And then what Mike calls is the ammo bar down on the right-hand side, which, I mean, he states, extra graphs, extra correlation, etc. But for me, that would be kind of follow-up secondary information, maybe. We omitted that side from our design because it just wasn't required. Why this layout? Well, half the time, if you're presenting or if you're stood with your poster and people are wandering around the room, you're going to block a little bit of it. If they're engaging or if they're stood looking at the poster, you can kind of be here on hand, but they can read the main information, they can get the full gist of it. Once you've caught their eye, seen the title, they're interested, they can stand here, there's a little bit of distance, you're able to engage, but it's not in your face. If they want to move on, they can move on. And then QR code, if they're really interested, you engage, discussion, please scan the QR for more information. Ultimately, it's about grabbing people's attention, and it's about presenting the most relevant information that you have. Cut out all the extra fluff, anything. Supporting data, put it on a web page, put it on a printout. Just keep it down to the bare essentials, essentially. So this is a sort of second iteration, if you like, of the design. Again, a lot more simple, very little text. This is really designed as a summary, grab people's attention and get them talking, get them engaging. Alternatives, something that ultimately you don't need to be forced into any layout. Like I'm using this better poster as an example, but ultimately your content, the message and the information you're trying to get out there, that should lead how you lay this out. Guidelines of having, for example, this left sidebar so that you're not stood in front of it, so that people can see it, and the hierarchy of information with the large headline and information, or graphic rather, still stand, but you're not restricted to any particular layout. If you want to use this kind of thing where you've got a hero section at the top and your kind of key findings at the bottom, left-hand side for the background and methods works just as well. So don't get too focused on, oh well, this it should be 3 columns, or it should be a grid layout with 1 column and then 2 sections. It's like, let your work guide the layout essentially. Another example, there's been a few iterations of this. People have taken Mike's approach as a starting point and adapted it. This one is by Derek Crow, and it's he's coined it Butter Poster, apparently because you can't get better than better, so he used butter. I guess it's a little bit memorable. Things that I like about this one, it's very clean, the contrast is good in terms of colour, the type stands out, the headlines stand out, your eyes drawn to the subtitles, which kind of guides you around the poster. So this is the key point, key visual, highlights, summary, getting smaller, less important as we kind of move along. I feel like a weatherman. There's a cold front coming in on this poster. So again, you can see though, visual hierarchy, key points, generally English language we're reading from left to right, top to bottom. So this works really well. And then just the subtle use of a grey background to separate each of the boxes, a little bit of white space, give it some breathing room. Don't cram everything in there. Let people be able to sort of see and read, even from a distance, even if they're a little bit further away and you're trying to draw them in closer. So this one works really nicely. Another version, although the sort of design of this is a little cluttered, the layout is quite interesting. So again, talking about don't let a template or a layout force your hand in how you present your information. Core foundations are still there, big image, big headline, grab people's attention, and then the kind of flow of the project comes down the left-hand side with results, and then additional, in this case, comparable methodologies along the bottom, and then a little bit of who's been involved, logos, etc., for who's been involved in the project. So again, it's about kind of flow of information, initial attention grabbing, and then flow of information, so that people can clearly understand the process, the order. Ultimately, you're kind of telling a story, and it needs to be clear, whether that's in kind of direction or just size of sections and text. So, all these examples, this better poster and variations of, fundamentally, they use design principles to create clear communication. That is the goal here. Whatever you're presenting, however complex your project may be, you need to present it clearly and effectively. It needs to be meaningful, understandable, but also impactful. You want it to stand out. You want to stand out from the competition. You want people to engage with you. So efficient, engaging, and impactful. How do we do that? So, couple of key areas when you're laying out your posters or designing your posters is the layout of them, which we've talked about briefly, typography in terms of size of headlines, again touched on that in the previous slides, But also tone of voice. Is this a deadly serious project? Is it a little bit of fun? Is it somewhere in between? Who's your audience? Who are you talking to? You can tailor that. So the text that you're using, work with your audience, use an appropriate tone of voice. Images, data viz, hugely important to grab attention, also incredibly powerful to summarize the content or findings without masses of text. Color and brand. Colors are good, obviously a consideration. Good contrast, accessibility, making sure you've not got colors that are too difficult to read, say red text on a black background. And potential brand. If you're representing an organization, an institution, or even just yourself, show that. Show the brand. If it's an institution or organization, if it's yourself, make it obvious. Put a little headshot down, put your name and contact details. Just kind of brandify it for yourself. So an example of visual hierarchy. This is kind of what I'm talking about in terms of your headlines and sections. So it's interesting that when we glance at this, we tend to read the large thing first, and your eyes kind of follow down. And even though this one's first, naturally we come to it last. So it's the power of typography. So bringing that back into our kind of layout here. I've not gone into too much detail because ultimately, as I keep kind of going on about it, it's clarity. So break your points down, use white space in the middle, any kind of supporting information, potentially, if you're stood here presenting, you can give people more room, it's not important, you can engage with them a little bit more, bring yourself closer, that sort of thing. Doesn't need to be 3 columns, can be anything. Again, like I say, do it to your content. It may be that, like Eric and I, we didn't need 3 columns, we just needed 2, and it doesn't need to be fixed. Don't worry about like, oh well, the template, it was this way, it was like an 1/8. If you've got information or graphics that fit here, fit the layout to the information. Don't get too constrained by the actual layout itself. Color and chaos. So a couple of examples here on, yes, visually you could argue these are more engaging than the wall of text examples, but then you're coming in and it's difficult to read some of this text because it's overlaid on an image. Again, tables instead of data viz. Like, for me, this could have done without the background. Pull out these tables into more interesting data visualizations, make that your highlight. If you glance at this, other than the headline, it's difficult to know what that's about. Like, the background image doesn't really say a lot. Yeah, it's related to the content, but it's more, for me, that's a distraction, not an advantage. This one over here, again, it's not too bad. The colours at least are legible. Orange and black's getting a little bit lost at the bottom. We just need to be careful of that. But then, and I'm about to come on to this with the typography, line length, as well as the amount of text you're putting on. It's like the typewriter effect of like, I'm having to read this really long line and I'm going all the way over here and then I've got to go all the way back and I'm reading a lot. Try and keep your text a little bit more concise. So there's that paragraph. And again, I wouldn't recommend having this much text in. If you can summarize that, great. But you can see the difference. If you just sort of take a minute to read a couple of lines of each of those, you can see how much quicker and easier it is to take in the information on the bottom as opposed to that ridiculously long line length at the top. So, in terms of headlines, couple of examples as well. I used ChatGPT to create a 2,000-word paper on the impact of fossil fuels on climate, just for the sake of this. And part of that, this was basically the overview of it. Now, you might be tempted to use that as your headline. It's not too long, it's 4 lines. It's kind of pretty involved. It tells you what it's doing. But wouldn't it be a lot better just to simplify that as much as possible? Make it a bit dramatic if you need to. Draw people's attention. So someone might walk past that. They might see fossil fuel consumption. They might see ecosystems, implications for ecosystems, which might interest them. But it's not as impactful as fossil fuels and climate change, unraveling the impacts on Earth's future. And that's boil things down, simplify them, keep them engaging, interesting, which is kind of what we've done here, going back to this, the original design. Other thing with the titles, it's worthwhile pulling out or highlighting in some way keywords from the title. Anything that is going to make it easier for anyone that's kind of walking by, wanting to engage. They're going to pick out various aspects of it and run with that. So ultimately, simplicity, less is more. If you can say it in images, say it in images. Mario's going to come on to that. But don't overthink the layout. Don't overthink the amount. Don't sort of make the mistake of, I need to put everything in so it shows just how much work I've done. Put it on a website or put it on a printout. Keep it bold, keep it simple, keep it clean. That's kind of it. Just a couple of resources for you. So, getting a QR code. My favorite QR code generator is QR Code Monkey, qrcode-monkey.com. The thing I like about this is you can drop a logo in it, which kind of, again, just adds a little bit of impact, uniqueness, identity. If you want, you can set colors, and you can customize whether it's square, round. There's a couple of different options for it. So QR Code Monkey's ace. Obviously, a QR code only goes to one page, so you might want to have your full details on the project. You might also want your CV. You might want just personal information. You might want, if you have a personal website, you might want that on there. You may have links to resources based on the project. How are you going to get them in one QR code? Linktree, I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. Set up your Linktree URL. Use that for your QR. And in terms of icons, photos, graphics, a couple of good resources here. TheNounProject.com is one of my favorites for icons. And they also do photos. They've expanded now, but they began with just icons, and now they sort of do other things. Most things you can search for, 7 million icons in there. So again, kind of if you want to pull out certain areas, even if it's just an icon next to your headline, something like that, that's really cool. For anyone doing scientific projects, BioRender's kind of cool. It's one that I'm not familiar with. Someone's directed me to this. But science figures, scientific specific graphics, again, quick and easy. Check it out. So that's basically all I have. Like I say, keep it simple, don't overthink it. Boil it down to the bare essentials, and everything else, secondary, website or handout.
All right, thanks for that, Jonny. Jonny and I didn't have a chance to kind of like consult very much, but I'm very pleased to say that there is going to be a lot of overlap between what he's been saying and what I'll be saying. So, welcome. This is the data visualization segment of the presentation. My name is Tiozzo, and I am the data analysis and visualization librarian here at UMB Libraries. So yeah, we'll be talking mostly about data visualization. If I can get off this page.
sharing? Because it's not red. Oh, but,
Well, it's red here,
okay.
hopefully. Before I begin, though, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that UNB stands on the unsurrendered and unceded traditional lands of the Wolastoqey people. In keeping with my talk, I would like to state that while I'll be discussing a specific way of finding, assessing, and visualizing data, there are many legitimate ways of doing so based on different knowledge traditions. Just like this data viz illustrates an important interpretation of national and subnational regions based on indigenous mapping of this place and the nations that pre-exist the Canadian nation. All right, so basically I'll be taking a few minutes to talk about the importance of data visualization, and then I'll be going through a couple of principles that I think would be good guidelines in the poster making. Well, poster making in general, but really any kind of data visualization application. Okay, so let's quickly start with why is data visualization important. Visualizations are important because they help communicate ideas that are difficult to do through text or photos or numbers by themselves. There's a certain truth to the old saying, an image is worth 1,000 words. So let's dig into it. This is Anscombe's quartet. It's a classic data visualization example. Here we have 4 data sets, each comprising of several XY variables. If we apply a few basic statistics, we see that the 4 groups are virtually identical across those 4 metrics. The X and Y means are exactly the same across all 4 groups. The X and Y standard deviations are the same across the groups. The R, or the coefficient of correlation, is 82 for all 4 groups. And the R squared, the coefficient of determination, is 0.67 across 4 groups. So basically, even if you don't know a lot about stats, given these values, you wouldn't be able to tell one group apart from the other. If we plot them, however, we can quickly see that the groups differ significantly from one another. And that's one of the superpowers of data visualizations. It makes it easier to communicate information through a highly visual format. You're probably thinking, that's great, Mario, but what does this have to do with me? Well, you're probably working on a project, and that project probably has data associated with it. Presumably, you'll want to communicate your project's findings to your audience, in this case, in a poster session. So you've got to ask yourself, what's the best way of communicating that data to your audience? And I would submit that data visualization should be a very powerful tool in your toolbox to effectively communicate your data to your audience, whether that's in a poster session, a report, a conference, or a thesis defense. So let's get started. Principle number 1. Know your data. There are 2 types of data: qualitative, so non-numeric data, oftentimes text, but also photos and videos, and quantitative data, which is numeric data. Within qualitative, we have nominal and ordinal data. Nominal data is non-ordered data, so if I had a survey of like, what's your favorite ice cream flavor, and I had strawberry, chocolate, and vanilla, it doesn't really matter the order. It could be vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. It doesn't really matter. Ordinal data is ordered data. So in that same survey, if I said, what did you think of Mario's presentation? You could have very unsatisfied, somewhat unsatisfied, neutral, somewhat satisfied, and very satisfied. You can see it's text, but you can see that there's a progression. There's an order to it. So that's ordinal data. Within quantitative, we have continuous and discrete data. Continuous data are numeric values over an interval or a continuum. So examples of this would be height, weight, time, temperature. Discrete data is numeric data that you can count. So the number of people in this room, or the number of computers on this floor. On top of knowing what type or types of data you're dealing with, you need to know the data, where the data was collected, who collected it, the quality of the data, so if there are any errors, inconsistencies, or missing values, privacy and copyright consideration, et cetera, et cetera. So being as familiar as possible with your data and all that surrounds it is a critical step in this journey. Principle number 2, Jonny alluded to this earlier, know your audience. Knowing your audience is crucial in explaining data accurately. You already know this intuitively. You're going to be speaking about current issues differently with your professor than you are with an acquaintance, than you are with your elementary school brother. Each of these audience members has different knowledge bases on the subject, different attitudes, and different interest levels. So it's important that you meet them where they are so that they're not bored or confused by what ideas you're trying to communicate. When you know who your audience is, you need to assess what you want them to know or do after they absorb your information. What story are you trying to tell them with your data? What's the action you are trying for them to take? Or what idea or concept do you want them to walk away with after you've presented to them? Principle number 3, choose the right chart. We see here kind of like a choose your own adventure type of chart that helps point you in the right direction depending on what type of data you are trying to represent. This is not an exhaustive list, nor is it the only list of its kind, but it's an example of A, how large the data visualization world is, and B, that not all data visualizations are appropriate for all instances. The type of chart you will choose will depend on the type of data you're working with, concept number 1, the story you want to tell them, and the knowledge of your audience, concept number 2. Principle number 4, visual elements influence perception. But just because there's a wide variety of data visualizations available to you does not mean that you can just slap together a data visualization and be done with it. There are certain principles that you should bear in mind when constructing a data visualization. And this is one of them. This chart is William Cleland and Robert McGill's 1984 ranking of visual elements, and it goes through how people decode visual cues from the most effective to the least effective. All right, pop quiz. I have a QR code, Johnny. If you want to use this QR code, or there's a link at the bottom of the screen as well, we're just going to have a quick 5-minute quiz, 2-minute quiz, 1-minute quiz. Let me know when you're logged on, and we'll get going. Good. Everybody okay? Yeah? Okay, I see some heads nodding.
No.
So the area of the larger circle is how many times bigger than the smaller circle? Not sure why it's being truncated here, but you have a few options. Oops. All right, it looks like most people are saying between 25 and 50% larger. All right, let's move on to the next one. Oh, somebody's already jumped into it. How much bigger is bar A, or the B bar from the A bar? Oh, geez.
How much bigger is it from or bigger than? Like it's distance,
Bigger.
or we're talking about the size?
The size, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, I can't seem to get, no. But it looks like more than, oh,
If you drag the scroll bar, maybe?
yeah, I tried that, but as soon as I click on it, it
Oh, it does that.
jumps to the next slide. Anyways, it looks like I'd say more than 50% is bigger than 50%. So the answer is it's 100% in both cases. You've already done this.
No, I haven't done this.
Oh, no, okay, good. For most of you, and this is typical, underestimated the circular difference because you looked at the difference in the radius and not the entire area. So you're looking at this distance as opposed to the area. Whereas the bar chart it's just a distance, right? There is no second dimension. So we've seen how circles and by extensions pie charts can be difficult to properly assess. So let's briefly talk about 3D pie charts. Now, for sure you've seen this before. The angle of the 3D pie chart creates a false perspective that the front of the pie is bigger than the back of the pie. Here we see a 3D pie chart constructed by Global News about an Ipsos poll that was taken on the previous Ontario provincial elections. In this case, the NDP had 35% of the voting intentions, but their share of the visual pie takes up 48% of the surface of the chart. 40% of the voting intentions go to the PC party, but only 32% of the surface of the chart represents that segment. The front edge of the chart is also shown, but not the back edge of the chart, again, favoring the front-facing elements. This type of data visualization really distorts the data. I put this page on almost all my presentations. My not-so-secret mission is to rid us all of 3D charts in general, but 3D pie charts in particular. So if you learn nothing else today, please, no 3D pie charts. And given that a 3D pie chart has two elements which are at the bottom of the effectiveness scale, it's not surprising that this method of visualizing data is suboptimal. All right, let's go through an example to view the next few principles. This is your classic out-of-the-box Excel bar chart. It illustrates the quarterly sales by division of a larger company. It's properly scaled and has all the data that you put into it. So there's nothing wrong with it per se, but let's use a few more data visualization principles to optimize it a little. Principle number 5. Arrange your data in a logical manner. This makes it easier for your viewer to grasp what the data is trying to say. In this case, we've contextualized the divisions by what we are trying to describe, their sales. And you can see that it's already easier to digest. Principle number 6, remove junk ink. And I think this goes into a little bit of what Jonny was saying earlier. Once you have the data visualized, make sure that as little as possible gets in the way of your users and the data. To make the data shine, remove what is superfluous or cluttery. Edward Tufte, who is a great data visualization one of the fathers, talks about data to ink ratio. You want your data to ink ratio to be quite high. Basically, you want to optimize your visualization for the data and remove any element that does not assist in doing this. Let your data breathe and shine through. Principle number 7, use reference points when appropriate. Again, this makes it easier for your viewers to grasp what the data is trying to say. We further contextualize the divisions by the average of the whole, as well as making explicit their individual sales instead of having the viewers guess. Principle number 8, use color for emphasis. Don't create a chart with a rainbow of colors that have no real meaning. Use color judiciously to provide a point of emphasis, to guide your viewers to the point you are trying to make. Now that we've created the context, we can start pinpointing what our message is going to be, and that can start with color. Quick note about color and accessibility. There are many websites to verify that the color you've chosen are appropriate for people with daltonism or other vision impairments. And this is important. You want everybody to be able to consume your data visualizations. Principle number 9, words matter. We continue to work on the message by working on our titles, subtitles, and other supporting text. In this case, the original title was your standard, this is what it is, title, but there's no insights and it provides no value added. Use titles, subtitles, and other contextual text to explain your insights to your readers or users. Principle number 10, data visualizations have power. Of course they do, that's why we use them. They inherently look authoritative, but it's incumbent on us to view them not with skepticism necessarily, but through a critical lens. So whether you're creating or consuming a data visualization, it's important to ask questions like, what is the source of the data? Does the argument put forward using the data make sense? What is being assumed? Who and what is being left out or hidden? As an example, these charts both illustrate the September 2012 jobs report. So recall that Obama was a president, so a Democrat was in the White House. The left-hand side is the Democrats' interpretation, and the right-hand side is the Republicans' interpretation. Framing is important and can really affect the narrative even when you're using the exact same data set. So be aware of this when creating, but also when consuming data visualizations. All right, let's recap the principles. Know your data. Number 2, know your audience. Number 3, choose the right chart. Number 4, visual elements influence perception. Number 5, arrange your data in a logical manner. Number 5, remove junk ink. Number 6, kidding. I'm usually good with numbers. Number 7, use reference points when appropriate. Number 8, use color for emphasis. Number 9, words matter. Number 10, data can be framed to drive an agenda. So remember the slide from earlier? We cleaned it up and made it more accessible to our audience. The data is able to be showcased in a digestible manner. That said, this is not the only way to follow the principles I've laid out, but hopefully you agree that this is an upgrade from the original Excel output. And I wouldn't be a good librarian if I didn't tell you never to forget to always reference your sources, including your data sources, whether that's on a poster, infographic, or report. So what now? I hope that I've made a good argument why you should use data visualizations when communicating your research findings, but some of you may not know how to do that. There's a lot of ways you can analyze and visualize your data. There are spreadsheets like Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. There are programming languages like Python and R. There are visual programs like Power BI and Tableau. And there are niche programs that offer something specific that isn't covered by the big ones. I like to start people off with Excel because it's pretty powerful and it's ubiquitous. It's used across disciplines and inside and outside the university. It's also free for UNB students through the Microsoft Office suite that is available to all students. If you're unfamiliar with Excel or just need some help with a certain aspect, you can find me online. The library website is lib.unb.ca, and this is my personal page. But you can just search Tiozzo, and I'm sure you'll find me. There you'll find my contact information, links to my research guides that focus primarily on Excel, as well as a link to my YouTube page. This is the home page of my YouTube page, and it consists primarily of Excel-related videos, including an intro to Excel video, which is roughly 20 minutes long. And the last 10 minutes or so is a step-by-step walkthrough of what we just did to the bar chart example. How to optimize it using the principles that we just talked about today. So again, like a good librarian, here are all my references. And I think that's it. And I'd like to thank you very much, and I'm happy to take on any questions.